Hi, and welcome back to Conversations with Chrissy. Really excited today to have Chris McDonold, the Executive Director of the Maryland Vehicle Theft Prevention Council in Maryland with the State Police. Thanks for being with me, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Well, just give me a little bit about your experience and something about the council. I'm not sure a lot of people are really aware of what it is, what its role is. Share a little bit about that.
So for me, I've been in the position with Maryland State Police Vehicle Theft Prevention Council since 2012. Prior to that, I had 25 years with the Baltimore County Police Department, and my last 17 years were assigned to RAT, which is the Regional Auto Theft Team. And that's a multi-jurisdictional task force that is made up of Baltimore County Police, Baltimore City Police Department, Maryland State Police, and Anne Arundel County Police. And it's in the process of getting expanded to Maryland Transportation Authority Police. So
That's great. Thank you for your service. That's wonderful.
Thank you. It's one of our main grantees that the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council provides funding for.
Great. Well, talk a little bit about the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council, what they do, what's the mission?
So the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council, it was legislatively put together in 1994, and the main reason was the funding or the vehicle thefts in Maryland and across the country, 2 million stolen vehicles, and within the state of Maryland we were almost 40,000, and with half of that being in the Baltimore County, Baltimore City region. So Regional Auto Theft Team was the first grantee, and that's made up of Baltimore County Police, Baltimore City Police, Anne Arundel County Police, Maryland State Police, and then expanding to now the Maryland Transportation Authority Police. So it's a very involved unit, and they really do a great job. We also have 20 grantees, them being one of them, that we provide funding for, and the funding is broken down between law enforcement, prosecution, and juvenile programs, public awareness, and education. And with Motor Vehicle Administration being a grantee.
You're certainly proud of that.
Yep. So I'm proud of that, and a long time grantee. So since the inception of the council, when the grants were expanded, and also the Vehicle Theft Prevention is 13 members. And they're all appointed by the governor, and then my role as an executive director is day-to-day operations, and it's managing the grants, working with our grantees, and coming together and addressing the needs that the state has in combating vehicle theft and vehicle crimes.
That's great. I mean, it's one of those tough issues that you can't solve alone, and so those partnerships are so important. It's all about the partnerships. Yeah. So you mentioned when it started what the rates were in terms of vehicle theft. Interested to hear what it looks like today, how that's evolved over time. So
the theft rates, we were doing very well in the state of Maryland up till through the middle of July, August of 2022, and that's when we saw the spike with the Kia Hyundais as a result from the TikTok challenge. And what that was is these individuals put together a video on how to steal the Kia Hyundais and put it out.
It's a playbook, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's their playbook, and it just went viral across, not just, where it was put together in Minneapolis, but it spread out through the whole country. So Maryland is not the only one seeing the increase. We've seen the increase of vehicle theft across the entire country as a result of this. And we knew that eventually it was going to come to us. And it's almost one of those things where, on the vehicle theft council, I always say, lock your car, take your keys, hide your valuables, use an anti-theft device. And we continue to push that. That's all we could have done at that time, and realizing if you had a Kia Hyundai, take those extra steps, and the steering wheel lock was hard to get because the company that was manufacturing that was about ready to go out of business. And then, we have that. So now We want them to, folks to use a steering wheel lock device, and make sure that if your vehicle is a key, if you have a push button start, you're good. You have an immobilizer. If you have a key, you need to go to the website, Hyundai's website, Kia's website, put your VIN number in there, your vehicle identification number, and it'll tell you whether or not you need that upgrade or not. And contact your local dealer to get that taken care of.
That's great advice. I know we sent emails to all the owners statewide of Hyundais and Kias just to try to get their attention. I know certainly the manufacturers.
And that's gotten a lot of traction and a lot of questions and things like that, which is good.
But I know the advice has been, and I think that's what you're referencing, make sure you still have that visible locking device on your vehicle, because folks are going and wanting to break into one of those two vehicles thinking they're going to be able to get in. That visual deterrent is still really helpful, even if you have the download.
Absolutely, because preliminarily we're seeing the numbers that are coming in through the grantees that our attempts are going up. So what's happening is our citizens are getting that upgrade, and there's stickers that Kia or Hyundai will put on the window, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, as they're throwing a rock through, they're not looking for that. So they're going in there, they're causing all the destruction, but they just can't steal the car. So if you use that steering wheel lock, it's visible, right? Someone's going to see that. And so I still, urge everybody to continue to do that.
Double protection is always better.
Exactly.
Talk a little bit about where are we seeing the rise. Certainly we hear about it in different locations in the state. Are you hearing that and seeing it more in certain locations?
So it's still where we always saw vehicle theft. It's up that 95 corridor. So in Maryland, 93% of your vehicle theft occurred up to 95, that Baltimore, Washington area. So our biggest increases that we're seeing today are in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County. And, Howard County has seen an increase, in Anne Arundel, which follows that same corridor. So we have seen some of the western counties. Frederick County has seen a little bit of an increase. Washington County has seen a little bit of an increase. But the majority has been that 95 corridor where we've seen that increase. So
it sounds like regardless of where you live, you should follow these good safety advice.
But people travel, we travel around the state. Make sure that you use those layers of protection and get a steering wheel lock. And if you have one of those cars that are effective, make sure you continue to use that.
Great advice. So we talk a lot about the actual theft of the vehicle, but what happens afterwards? After that vehicle is stolen, obviously I'm sure there's different scenarios you see, but I'm wondering, what is the motivation? What happens after that?
So I put it into two categories: professional theft, non-professional theft. So non-professional theft is stealing the car for a joyride. You hear the joyride. That's your low-hanging fruit. They're the ones that are the non-professional thieves are going out, stealing a car, doing a joyride, and maybe do some other crimes in them. They may go, but the car's most likely getting recovered.
You hear a lot about crime with young people. Maybe that's, younger kids seeing the video, wanting to, not understanding really the impact that they're having.
Well, exactly.
Fall into that category.
And it's, they're the ones that are so-called dangerous, right? Because they don't have driver's license. They're out there. The police are seeing them, whether they're running from the police at high speed, and it becomes a highway safety issue. And I mean, obviously, we don't want that. Don't want that happening. We want to limit the, and eventually, it's zero deaths, right?
That's right.
So eliminate our, those crashes.
And we have seen some, unfortunately, with stolen vehicles with tragic consequences.
So exactly. And then we get into professional theft. So in the professional theft, most likely that car is not recovered. And when I say professional theft, you're getting into changing your vehicle identification numbers, putting vehicles in a container or just a roll-on, roll-off ship and shipping them overseas. Insurance fraud, title fraud, vehicle finance fraud. These are all the crimes that fall under and I like using the term more, not just vehicle theft, but vehicle crimes. Carjacking falls into that because it's ultimately you want the vehicle. So for many years we say for law enforcement, make cars harder to steal. Well, now you need to have the keys for a lot of cars or the key fobs, and they're stealing the cars. And especially when you're into your high-end cars where there's a demand for those overseas and they're carjacking those or stealing them and putting them in a container and shipping them.
And we're close to the port, obviously, which creates challenges there.
And there's been some cases across the state that we've had those that happen. And it's not just, here, thieves will port shop, right? You'll look around at where do they have the contacts, or where is it easier for them to ship cars and get them out of state. So, I tell folks that, my concern is with the Kia Hyundai, that's all non-professional. We still have the professional theft going on. The problem being is all our resources are going towards the non-professional, and it's taken away from that professional organized group that, they're still out there, and those crimes are still being happening. And so. You
mentioned carjacking. Maybe we could talk about that for a minute, because it is such a concern, right? People are out shopping. They're maybe a little distracted, not paying as much of attention. In that case, they might still just want the vehicle, but the person, the owner, might be in the way of that, right? And get injured as a result of it. Any advice there? I know that's a fear for people.
I tell folks, in law enforcement, head on a swivel, right? Situational awareness, know your surroundings. Always look at what's going on. I mean, so many people are distracted. They're looking at their phones as they're going in there, or they're shuffling to get their keys out, or just be prepared. And if something doesn't feel right, don't go.
Trust your instincts, right?
Trust your instincts. Like if the little hairs in the back of your neck are popping up, then
something's probably not
wrong.
right.
So just always just be aware of what's going on, and don't make yourself a victim, right, is what we try to do. So just be aware of what's going on. And it's, carjacking, it's very dangerous.
It's a scary situation.
It's a very scary situation. A lot of these folks that are committing that, they're having guns, and you just want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on and things like that. So,
well, good advice, because I know we all find ourselves distracted, especially this time of year. So thank you for that. Are there vehicles, I know we've talked about Honda and Kia, the specific issue, but are there other vehicles that tend to be targeted more frequently, either because they're sought after on the market or for other reasons?
Any vehicle that someone can make some money on. We still see a lot of the Dodge products, Toyota Camrys, and a lot of those are just so many of them. They're a popular car and things like that. So, but pretty much, the Kia Hyundais, if we look at the top 10 for 23, it's going to probably be quite a few of them will be the Kia Hyundais.
That makes sense. Hopefully going forward we'll move past that, but it certainly makes sense.
And it will. We didn't solve the problem back in 1994, 95 right away. It took, collaboration and partnerships and everybody being on board to combat that. And it took some time to get those thefts down. And really the big thing is relying on the public. Right. It's just so many things that, our citizens can do with, just locking I always go back, locking your car, taking your keys, hide your valuables, use anti-theft device.
There's things we all know, but we forget about, right?
Yes, and I think, when our theft rate was down so low, it's just, we go about our business. But now with our thefts are back up, is to just be aware and try to, follow those 4 simple rules, as I say.
And it's cold this time of year, so people might start their vehicles, and we know you have some good advice there too, right?
Yeah, it's just, especially with newer cars, how long does it take a newer car to heat up? Right. Not very long. It's not like the days where, I've grown up, my dad said, go start the car. They had to run for 10 minutes because we'd freeze. But, cars today, it doesn't take long to.
Yeah, it's not worth the time, right?
No, it's not.
So talk about what happens if your car is stolen. Unfortunately, you find yourself in that situation. You're probably a bit panicked, not sure what to do. Walk the consumer through that. What is the best course of action to take?
So the first thing is call the police, call 911. I mean, that's the first course of action. And if you have any suspect information or anything that, the 911 operator is going to ask you, do you know who took it? No, I've just, I parked the car at 10 o'clock last night, and then I come out to go to work at 6 in the morning, and it's gone. Right. And then so call 911, get the officer will take a report, and then once you get the report done, insurance company.
Sure.
Just making sure you reach out and contact your insurance company and let them know so you can start that process.
Well, good advice. Hopefully we don't find ourselves in that situation, yes. But good to know if so. Can you talk about, other safeguards that we should think about in terms of our vehicles and, leaving keys in automobiles? We talked a little bit about being cold, but valuables in cars. What are things that make cars more attractive if somebody is looking to steal vehicles? They're in a parking lot, and what makes them zero in on a car?
Well, especially this time of year, right? People are shopping and your gifts, and they'll buy some gifts, go back and put them in the car. It's just hiding those valuables, making sure nothing is out. The thieves will look in there even if it's loose change or anything that they can get into that will keep us. So I know it's hard sometimes, and everybody's busy, and you want to leave a jacket, or you want to leave a briefcase, or you want to leave golf clubs or any other things in your car. It's just those are attractors to the thieves on what to do. So it's just making sure that you don't keep anything of value in the car. So. And
those alarm systems, anti-theft systems, they're all important, I guess, as you're looking at features in a car too, right? As you're purchasing it.
Exactly. So the newer cars with the immobilizers on them, with push button starts and things like that, don't leave your key fobs in there.
Yeah.
And also check, some of the cars, some of the manufacturers are doing a valet fob or a valet key. Check your owner's manual, making sure that there's not another key fob in there, because a thief may break into your car just wanting to steal something, and then they're like, oh, hit the button, they're like, oh, it started, so now I got a bonus, right? I only wanted to steal some things out of it, now I got the car, because then there's a fob somewhere in that car that somebody left, whether they knew they left it or it was left in the glove box or in the owner's.
Yeah, good advice. So that service key could be in there and you don't even realize it. That's a good point. So even if you're not a victim of auto theft, there's impact on everybody in society, right, from these crimes. You can talk a little bit about that and the consequences.
Well, we talked about the highway safety issue, right? You have somebody steals a car and is going down the road 100 miles an hour, and we're not looking for innocent people to be hit. So those are all things that if you prevent that, that's we're taking that out of it.
And insurance, I guess this is all baked into insurance
as you look at our insurance rates will go up, and it's not just because I live in a western part of the state or a place where auto theft's not a big concern, but why are my rates going up? Well, everyone's rates are going to go up in the insurance company, because based on where you're at, and so it does get passed on to the consumer. I mean, if insurance companies paying out all these claims, they're going to have to recoup their money somehow and make sure that they're meeting their budgets and things like that. So it does have a role on everybody, whether you're been a victim or not.
In the automotive industry, the repairs and all the things that are kind of downstream from that.
Well,
issue.
Exactly. So if a car's stolen and stored in a yard, there's fees that are accumulated that the insurance company has to pay, and those are all fees that are going to eventually be passed on to anybody who has car insurance.
Oh, great. Well, I know you mentioned at the beginning grant funding and how that funding is given to many of the partner organizations. As I said, we're proud to be a grantee at MVA and going to talk about some of the specific good things that your grant funding is used to do. Anything else that you want to share with us?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your partnership and for your time on the council as a member, and your support. And like I said earlier, it is a partnership, and it is a collaborative effort for us to reduce vehicle theft and its related crimes.
Well, glad to be part of it. And there's messages, the important messages we all know about locking your car, putting your valuables away, good reminders for everybody to keep us safe and keep our vehicles safe.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So for our next guest today, we're excited to have Bill Banahan from MVA's Investigation Division. Great to see you, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
So I think before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what is MVA's Investigation Division. The general public might not even recognize that exists, and the great function that you do.
Sure, great question. The Investigation Division, we have about 40 investigators split down into about 6 different squads. Each squad responsible for something a little bit different, managed under a chief and then we have a manager and then a director of security and investigations.
That's great. And important work that you do to keep Marylanders safe, whether it's identity theft or vehicle theft issues that we were talking about with Chris earlier. And you obviously have one of those grants that he referenced in terms of combating vehicle theft.
Yeah, when I retired from the police department, I came here under a grant, the MVA, to continue what we were doing at the Regional Auto Theft Task Force with fraudulent documents. And it was funded for, I think, about 2 years before we went from contractual to PIN under the grant from the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council.
And talk a little bit about what you do in terms of, really trying to prevent that theft. Obviously, Chris and law enforcement focus on it from the actual crime perspective. At MVA, what we're focused on is that titling and registration, because then you're taking ownership, which obviously there could be a victim involved in that as well.
Yeah, what happened was back in 2010, one of your managers, Paul Taylor at the time, identified that there was an issue at one of the branches, and we got involved at that point, and then realized that there were fraudulent documents that these criminal enterprises, or bad actors, if you will, were manufacturing, and manipulating to title stolen vehicles to get by, and then obviously sell them, to the consumers. So in my role as coming here was basically to identify those suspected stolen vehicles, whether they were fictitiously VINed or under cloning with fraudulent documents, in order to try and recover those and get those back to the rightful owner, and then thereby delete those false records in the systems.
So VIN, that's your vehicle identification number. So it's kind of like a unique number for each vehicle, right? And so that's why that's so important. What is cloning? Talk about that for the average Marylander.
Cloning is when, in a criminal enterprise, the thief would steal a car, and then I'd look for a similar vehicle, either online or in a parking lot. They would get the legitimate VIN off of that vehicle, and then go back with the stolen vehicle and then retag it. What we would call is they would make up a VIN plate that was false with the cloned VIN that they found in the parking lot or online, and then put that on the stolen vehicle, and then replace those other VIN labels with that same VIN, and then thereby use fraudulent documents at that point to get an ownership document, or sell it with a fraudulent document to a consumer, thereby making it full circle for their money, as they got the stolen vehicle and got all the money from that, and then usually an unsuspecting customer was stuck with a vehicle that we would later identify as being cloned.
So you have two victims then, right? The original victim that had the car stolen, but then also the individual that purchased the vehicle in good faith.
Correct. And really that person usually is the one who suffers the biggest loss.
So talk a little bit about what you do on a daily basis. How do you look for issues, whether it's electronically or, on the actual title documents that we still use, those secure documents that are a sign of ownership? Yeah,
we would get the actual transaction, the actual original titles at times, and we would review those over these decade or more that I've done it. It's been millions of titles that we've looked at, and you identify those, either that they've been altered, you can see the alteration on it, or that it's a fictitious or a fake title completely, and then you would open up the investigation on that end of it. The opposite way is we also get electronically a MVA hold report weekly from Office of Information Technology here, and I review those, as many as I can, to go through and see if we can identify those with anomalies that wouldn't match the title state that was used in the transaction, or that it's a completely fictitious VIN, and then we would go from there.
So that MVA, that's a National Motor Vehicle Titling and Information System, right?
Correct.
And so it's a system that all state motor vehicle agencies use, and it allows vehicles to move to one state to another and ensure the rightful owner is transferred, and also brands, right? If it's been in a flood or salvage, you want to make sure the owner's aware of that.
Right, and we look to make sure that they match, and if they don't match, then obviously there's an anomaly there for us to look into, and it could be that this isn't updated, but most of the time we find that if it doesn't match, there is definitely an anomaly there that makes us look into it earlier to see a suspected stolen or a cloned vehicle.
Well, it sounds like a great tool to identify these stolen vehicles.
It is. It's a great tool. It allows us to do it. We do find that sometimes with the criminal enterprises, they have a way of evolving and utilizing and getting a hold of some of that information. But at the same time, it is the best tool that's out there to make it work for us.
Well, we appreciate you're there counteracting it along with the teams of folks that work. I've heard that the teams have actually identified 50 stolen vehicles this year. That's really impressive.
Yeah, there's a few of us that are doing it now, and we've identified a little over 50 so far this year that are suspected. And as Chris had mentioned, we do have a big partnership with our task forces. We work closely with the two task forces, the WAVE Task Force, the Washington Area Vehicle Enforcement Task Force down in D.C., and the RAT Task Force here in Baltimore, as well as ASED. We rely a lot on those as well. And then because of our organizational contacts over the years across the country, we use a lot of the International Association of Auto Theft Investigator contacts that we get some of these cloned vehicle complaints, or even our vehicles that are cloned end up in other states that are stolen. So we have good contacts to work that partnership in order to identify those cars.
Yeah, those jurisdictional lines don't really mean anything when it comes to these kind of issues.
No, East Coast, East and West, we don't go too far east at this point because it's not that much. But yeah, West Coast, it goes all over the place now.
So I know you're very humble, so you probably wouldn't say this, but I understand 16 of those were vehicles that you actually personally identified. So thank you for that good work, because they're not just vehicles, there are people behind each and every one of those.
Yeah,
wonder if you could share any stories. I'm sure you have many over the years.
One of the things with the cloning issue is again that they cross state lines. So in that regards, recently we had vehicles that you would have stolen from New York, say, and they would revin those and then bring them down online on like one of the online ad agencies. So they would use that online for the internet and try and sell the car. And usually they target the unsuspecting consumer who's going to get a 2022 vehicle for far below market value, and then they would meet that person in a parking lot, and they would sell that vehicle and give them a fraudulent title. Then when it would be titled here, we would catch that in our VITAS holds, and at that point we would get involved and locate the vehicle and go to identify it, and then find out it's a stolen vehicle, and then return it back to the insurance company at that point if it's been paid out, or the original owner. So that's some of the things that we were doing. We did between Virginia and Maryland, we had about 35 in one group of criminal enterprise that was really coming down and targeting them off of one of the online ads. And we eventually, through arrests that stretched from north of New York all the way down to the Carolinas. And we were able to kind of get that end with the partnership in New York for them to identify who was actually doing the thefts.
That's great. So it sounds like some good advice in there. If the deal seems too good, it probably is. There's probably something
if you're, if you got to be wary, just like with anything else, with the online ads, there's if you look on nicb.org is a website you can go on. It gives you some prevention methods for cloning. It's kind of the same thing. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. If you're buying a car from somebody that is using a cell phone and you're meeting them in a parking lot, and it just seems like it's $18,000 less than what the market value would be here, might be a red flag, and you might want to do a little more research on that vehicle before you buy it. Maybe even, ask them to meet you at a police station instead, because obviously, if they know they're driving a stolen car, they're not going to meet you on a police station, even though you're not going to go into it. They just don't want to take the chance. But you want to be wary and watch those online ads for sure. And again, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, that's a great point. And, for some people, that vehicle is the most expensive thing they own, right? So we want to make sure that when you're doing that transaction that you're taking those precautions.
Yeah, because a lot of folks, it's their life savings. $18,000, they all deal in cash.
Right.
You might want to try just doing part cash, maybe a cashier's check. I wouldn't give them a personal check. Take a picture you know, at the place where you're buying it, if you're looking at it, you know, or before you actually buy it. Take a picture. Don't rely on the ID that the person's going to give you, because most often they're coming down with fake IDs. You know, driver's licenses, you can get them anywhere online now, or somebody that you're part of your criminal enterprise will make them themselves. So that ID is probably going to be fake. So it's probably not going to be the person. Make sure the person who you're dealing with, the name is on the title as well.
ID theft, that's a good topic for another day. So, but definitely good hints for customers to be able to look for. I wonder if you can talk a little bit, Chris touched on this as well. Why is it so important to stop these stolen vehicles from getting into the system, from being titling and registered?
It really messes up the entire system. I mean, again, if it's a clone and it goes in, then that cloned vehicle is going to stop a legitimate customer in another state or our state from any title work or any activity. Because if it's cloned in, say, Arizona, and the real customer is here, the Maryland customer is going to be frozen out of the system because that vehicle is going to be shown as titled out of state. So it affects, and it's not an easy fix, because now you have to work with that other state in order to get that ID'd. Or oftentimes we get the car here ID'd as the true car, and then we can work with some of our folks in vehicle services who help out a lot with, hey, maybe we can steal that pointer if it's going to take a long time in order to get it out, because it's just an inconvenience that you, as a consumer owning a legitimate car that you've had for 10 years, you can't do anything with it for several months.
Right, and it could be determined or viewed later, because we've just recently joined MVA, and so now part of that system that we're finding some of these issues, and it could come as a surprise to somebody.
It's very much so, especially with some of the older cars, because they've been around for so long that nobody really has any knowledge, and they go to renew now, and now they're being stopped.
Well, another great thing that happened with the Customer Connect IT modernization is these protections. We talk a lot about the customer service piece of it, but I don't think we probably talk enough about the security measures that have been put in place, including some of the things that you and your team do.
Yeah, it's great. It's easy to see everything. I mean, we can get all of the history and whatnot, so it's pretty good. We go out all the time. I think last week we were probably out on about 6 or 7 cars just to go out and ID whether it's the suspected car that's stolen or it's the clone. A lot of your older cars now, your 60s and 40s. I got to tell you that in the last 2 years, I think I've become pretty good at identifying a 1934 Ford or Model A, whatever, because you go out on a lot of these older cars that were just titled off of registration cards back in the day.
I see.
So
prior to the systems and everything we have in place today. Any other advice for customers? I mean, obviously stolen vehicles, but also reference a little bit what we call branded vehicles, because there's been damage in the past to them. Can they look for those things?
Yeah, you can look for, especially with flood vehicles. NICB always talks about the flood vehicles. When you see a major disaster in some of these southwest states or the southern states where these vehicles, or even now with the climate change in some of the northern states, we get a lot of flooding. Those vehicles are then picked up by a lot of people, at auctions and whatnot, because if the insurance company doesn't get a salvage title to it, it doesn't really show up as a salvage vehicle. So before you go and you buy something, you want to look. If it's coming from a title that just recently, the title state that has a disaster like a flood, you want to look at the vehicle. You look for the rust on the inside of the wheel wells and on some of the things in the dashboard that wouldn't necessarily be there. Because they'll go and they'll clean them up, and then they're going to give you a vehicle that's worth not as much as what you're going to pay. And then if it happens to show a brand, when you go to use that title, it's going to be stopped because it's a salvage. So you want to ask a lot of questions, and you want to make sure, really, you want to make sure you're buying from a licensed dealer. Not, somebody that's on the street that you don't know, because you don't have any recourse.
Well, great advice. And as you said, it could be your savings, your life savings that you put together. So you want to make sure that it is legitimate and you're not running into these other issues on the back end.
Absolutely.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much about it.
Well, I'd just like to thank you as well for the great work that you do here at the MVA and to really help our customers. That's what it's about at the end of the day, protecting them and making sure that their vehicles are safe. So thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. Also want to again thank Chris McDonold for his efforts with the Maryland Vehicle Theft Prevention Council. And thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to continuing the conversation moving forward.